and the goal is to bring you your next favorite band.
Thanks for having us. This is a very cool show.
Yeah, so through many iterations, and we finally landed on the weirdest one by far.
Yeah, simple of feelings, and boom, you got a sound.
I remember this one time, I had been writing some songs, and I went out. I'm just going right in on this story. I went out, and so I was.
The story's longer than the song itself. We'll go ahead and play it.
And listen, it's going to be everybody's favorite band. Welcome to your next favorite band. That's both the show title and our promise to you. We here at Stereophilia Studio are tireless in our pursuit of finding incredible, genre-defiant artists who are either a hot, up-and-coming band or a group that has been delivering for years but have flown under the radar. Tonight, we go to the movies. We talk about the SouthSide Film Festival, and in particular, the music selections that are being played. Each month, we will bring you live streams, audio podcasts, and perhaps even a live concert where you can listen to the stories and hear the music of artists personally curated by us based on what we feel will be worthy of your time. Be sure to subscribe and tune in to each episode because the possibilities are endless and you never know who will be your next favorite band. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Philip Reese.
Hello, I am your co-host, David Moore.
And this is...
Your next favorite band.
Sort of.
Goes to the movies.
Goes to the movies to find their next favorite band.
And since this is specifically about a film festival, it's also to find their next favorite film.
Excellent.
Oh, the amount of research that went into this prep, we wrote this before the writers went on strike.
That's right. Yeah, we snuck it in.
We had the script 17 months ago. We've been sitting on this.
Then we practiced it, we rehearsed it.
Oh yeah, right now you can tell.
I blew the opening as always. But
that's intentional.
We normally banter a little bit. David, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Phil?
Good. Weather's been nice.
It's been lovely.
Yes. Okay, good. Done with the banter because we have lots to get to today. We have something different, like we said in the open. The opportunity to talk about something local to Bethlehem again, but the idea of a film festival is everywhere. I mean, these entries might be available if you have one nearby you, but we definitely want to promote our festival here.
Correct.
To try and encourage people to come check it out, and then obviously since our focus is music, just about every year there are music-related entries.
Sure.
Whether it's documentaries or just music shorts or whatever. So we're going to talk about some of those. We have some interviews to share of those movie makers, but definitely off the top here, we want to welcome to the show board members from the SouthSide Film Festival, and even a founding member.
Founding member.
And current board president.
Absolutely.
Jeff Vaclavik.
He's on the Mount Rushmore that they
He's
have.
on the Mount Rushmore of the SouthSide Film Festival.
I don't know about that.
And then and board member and film wrangler Ben Bertalan.
That's me, yes. Yeah,
Excellent.
wow.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for having us. I mean, this was
Our
really
pleasure.
very much your idea.
Was it? I thought it was your idea.
Maybe
I think we may have cooked it up together.
we could have cooked it up together, but you were at a minimum so open to the concept and very supportive of
I was
it.
complicit.
Yes.
I mean, we're always looking for new and interesting ways to help promote the festival.
Sure.
You know, especially, this wouldn't have been possible when we started the festival 19, 20 years ago.
for sure. Yeah.
You know, so for us, it's something new. It's different. It's exciting. It's reaching, a new group of people that we might not have otherwise been able to reach.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Let's talk about that. So it is the 19th annual, but started 20 years ago. There's obviously a skipped year because of a pandemic issue.
Correct.
But
I think 2004 was our first.
Yeah.
sure.
We
So
called it-
20 years. It's not like a young festival.
No. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're probably the oldest continuous film festival in the area,
probably.
at least definitely in the valley, if
Yeah.
not wider. There are several other
The entire
quality
eastern
festivals.
seaboard.
The entire East Coast, east of the Rockies.
Don't fact check that one. But I was just going to say, I went on to, for the research of the interviews, I was able to get access to Film Freeway, and in there is reviews of the festival. Like, it's a very cool, almost social media platform for film festivals and film submitters,
Right.
Yeah.
and they get to review each one's. And so, I'll say this because I got to see it, and it won't sound like bragging since you're not saying it. It's the reviews on our festival is very, very high.
Absolutely.
And I think even somewhat at the surprise of the reviewer, they're like, you won't believe how serious they take it. Because it is. I think people sleep on the Lehigh Valley and
Absolutely.
Bethlehem. And then they get here and they realize how awesome it is.
We
And
had
then the
a
reviews
film
are very
a few
good.
years ago, and I won't say the film or the filmmaker, but it was our opening night film.
Rhymes with, no, I'm just kidding.
And the filmmaker is fairly well known in Hollywood. He's produced a lot of films, and he
Kane's
came
Jammer.
he came east and did a festival in New York. It wasn't one of the big festivals, but it was a bigger, big sized New York festival. And he said, I was really expecting that one to be much better.
Right. It's the backhanded compliment.
He said it was really the opposite. He said,
yeah.
But he said this has been wonderful, and we really from the beginning, we've made it a point to treat every filmmaker the same, whether it's a kid just out of film school with their first film on the festival, or somebody who's been doing it for 20 years. They're exactly the same. We treat people who make shorts the same as the people who make features, and we've heard that a lot over the years, that people who make shorts are like, yeah, we get put in the corner sometimes at these festivals, and we're like, people love the shorts blocks. I mean, we have 6, 7, 8 shorts blocks every year, and people love the blocks.
Yes.
It's easily the most popular part in many cases. Not always, but we just treat everybody well. They come in here. They come into Deja Brew, our cafe here,
Where we're being hosted tonight.
Where we're being hosted.
Your business.
My business.
We should
right?
promote that too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Deja Brew.
20, 30, how many years in business? 28 years in business. But this becomes our headquarters here. So filmmakers come to town, they check in here, the volunteers check in here, you can buy tickets here. But, when they get here, if I'm the only one here, I've already seen their film. I'm expecting them. We have a list of who's coming to town. We know who there are. If there are other people on the board or on the jury who are expecting, they're like, oh, hey, I loved your film. And a lot of times they're surprised a little bit that we know who they are, and so many people are looking forward to your film, and they were selling tickets specifically for your film, and it's fun to see that. It's fun to be like, people are like, really? Oh, okay, and that's the thing about festivals. Like you mentioned some of these films maybe playing at other festivals. The good thing about it is you can go to these film festivals, see a film that you might not be able to see elsewhere unless it gets picked up for streaming or for distribution, which they don't always.
Yep.
But the other thing is, there's also a good opportunity to interact with the filmmakers.
Right, sure.
Especially in a festival of this size, you can see them coming out of a pizza place or a bar or a sandwich shop or wherever, and chat them up about it. And they're always willing to do it. That's my favorite part is the Q&As and so many filmmakers from the very first year will say to us, what a great audience, what great questions, and during the Q&A, they'll say, that's an excellent question. And I always know, okay, it's going well when that happens. Because, we always try to have a couple...
you say that to all the film festivals.
We always try to have a couple of questions prepared just in case, nobody's asking anything. And that's so rare because, you throw one out there and then a lot of hands are up and you don't have to worry about asking any of those other questions, And, I can't tell you how many times over the years filmmakers have pulled me aside and said, that's one of the best Q&As we've ever had.
That's awesome.
So that has nothing to do with us as
No, that's the
festival
the
pros.
community.
That's the community itself, and and they'll comment on that a lot of times on some of these reviews we get, like how engaged the community, the crowd was, how excellent they were. They paid attention. They knew where to laugh. I suppose there's some crowds who don't know where to laugh.
That's
but I remember
great-
that one year
yeah.
when one of them. They said they knew exactly where to laugh. That was perfect. I'm like, yes.
That's the applause sign hung
Yeah,
next to
yeah,
the
exactly,
screen.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
late night television audiences,
That's where you always go, thank you? Cool. So let's talk a little history. We always love to tell so let's go back 20 years.
Okay.
You and 3 other people
Yep.
decide to form the film festival.
Decide to
Is
form
it
the
just
film
like
festival.
sitting around going, I've got a great idea, or is it something else that inspires
Well,
it?
there was a guy who was a good friend of Benny's named Graham Stanford, and Graham had a film that he made at Lehigh University.
Okay.
In lieu of writing a paper.
Which is like right there.
Right there. And he did this short film in lieu of writing a paper, and it was about like Italians, and it was like a racial kind of thing, but he did it as a film instead of a paper. And he showed it across the street at the deli, across the street from our deli, in their basement, and they got about 100 people to show up for it. And he said, hey, this is a cool idea. We should... I think his original thought was having a couple other businesses showing a film in the evening, like where people would show up at different places, not so much a festival itself. And when he talked to me about it, we sort of brainstormed a little. We got 2 other people involved, Sally Hanlon, Rob Dougherty, and we said, how do we go about... We had no idea how to start this thing.
Right.
You know, Sally actually wrote to one of the festivals. I think it was Telluride.
I think it was. All right.
And said, hey, how do we get started? What do we do? What's your advice? And they said, our advice is don't do it. And she wrote them again. You know, when we actually wrote letters, she wrote them again and said, no, seriously. And they
Someone
said,
sat down and actually wrote.
And they said, seriously, don't do it. It's a lot of work. And we're
Just
like,
say no.
We're doing it anyway. So, but, you know, we just figured out this is how you do it. This is how you apply to be a nonprofit. This is how we promote these things. Who do we ask for money? How do we get films, you know? And I'm not even sure how we got some of the films, though, because we did not have a service.
Yeah, I was in the jury the very first year.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of VHS tapes. And
we had a post office box. I went down and checked the P.O. box, and
it.
for several years we got VHS tape. We actually got a VHS tape maybe 7 or 8 years in that just came in an envelope. There wasn't even a cardboard box.
Somebody sends a Betamax to you just to challenge the entire...
Can you watch this? If you can.
Right.
It's
And
the
I remember
best
that
film you've
the last
never been able to
VHS we
see.
got, we actually showed. It was a very short film.
oh, that's right.
It was from Canada, and it was about graffiti on a mailbox, and it was hysterical. And the guy came all the way, I think it was from Alberta, which
Yes.
is way out west.
Yeah, seriously.
And he came and spent the whole week here, and I'm still friends with him on Facebook. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
So
And so, Ben, you were there from the beginning.
I was from the very beginning on the jury. Yeah, it was just crazy amounts of films and just over the years, just how things have changed. Like I remember coming here to like exchange DVDs and be like, here's my DVD. I watched this one. Ooh, I've been sitting on this one for weeks. I haven't watched it, and now it's almost all streaming. So it's just crazy. How
That's got to
much
be a
has
big
changed.
help to get things moving along.
Yes, 'cause
I would
I'm like,
invariably lose one on my desk
I was
for
gonna
weeks at a time.
say,
People are like, who has that?
that's
I'm
what
like, I
happened.
think I might have. You know.
It's infamously unlabeled.
Yeah.
Where you just, it's like,
Yes.
We had
maybe?
one film. There was a guy brand new to the jury, and he parked a couple blocks away and dropped the CD,
right.
the DVD,
Yes.
and got it scratched on the stones till he found it. And that was a film that we ended up showing too, if you remember. And he was
With
like,
all the skips.
yeah,
and
he came in and
everything.
said, "Here, I don't know if it'll play or not." And we ended up showing. So whenever we have these bad luck with these things, they end up being good films that we show. You know.
That's funny.
So thankfully now we don't have to,
Yeah.
everybody can watch at home.
Sure.
All the jury
Right.
can stay at home and watch. But then we meet here
Yep.
periodically and we put the films on here and talk about them because it's better. It's different because you could be at home having a bad night or you've had a bad day or whatever the conditions are and you see a film and you think this wasn't that good or you think this was really good and then when you see it differently in a different light literally and you see it with people you sometimes think oh wait a minute that wasn't that good or this was much better than I thought.
Right, sure.
And I always tell new jurors don't be afraid to change your vote. You know, you can. I've done that many times. You know, I don't think it's like, oh, everybody likes it, I better like it. It's how do you feel about it? When you feel differently about it, change your vote. You know, and I can't tell you how many times I've done that. A lot of times because you know, or you'll watch 3 or 4 really bad films in a row, and that 5th one looks great compared to it, but when you see it on its own, it's really not that good.
There's
anyway.
definitely a couple of
it's
jokes
like,
in
well,
there.
compared to that, it was, but
Right.
you know,
So that's very cool. Thank you for all the time you guys put into that.
Oh,
and again, it really is a special thing that our community has. Let's talk a little bit about the setting because for people who are able to make it down for it, it's a very cool setup where there are different venues playing different movies. And so on a given night, you might see one movie here and then stroll down in a night. Like you may hate that and want to sit in the same place and watch everything that's there. Or if you have looked at it and you're interested, it's a cool way to kind of navigate the South Side to go from one place to the next and get to see some movies and some buildings that maybe you've never even been into before. Definitely. So if you don't mind, just maybe list off the different venues that are showing different movies.
Our venues this year, same as the last several years. Our main venue, the big venue, is Charter Arts High School which is a really, really beautiful venue.
Yep.
Touchstone Theater.
Yep.
Which is about 72 seats.
They used to be those were in our first venues
in our very first year,
and
yeah.
then we went away, and then we came back again.
Yeah. And Touchstone is in an old firehouse, but it was repurposed as a theater, which puts on some great performances throughout the year.
They do a great job.
And our third is the National Museum of Industrial History. They have a nice big kind of meeting room where we're in there amongst all these huge relics that
Which
are
is
out,
awesome.
Just outside the wall. So we have three
And
different
very
sizes.
Bethlehem, like
Very, absolutely.
like it's a great
Very Bethlehem.
way to show off our
And
town.
we've always done it. We've had many different Lehigh venues over the years. We've had Comfort Suites and all kind of Brockle Middle School, the old and the new Brockle.
Right.
And we've always tried to space them out so that you are able to walk in between.
It's a very walkable festival.
Walkable festival, and then stop in at the businesses in between. Stop and have a quick beer, grab an ice cream, get into the next screening.
Yep.
Or, as you said, you could sit in one place all night. And I like the blocks here. I'm going to stay here tonight.
Yep.
Right. And whichever way it works, and we try to time it so you can get from one to another.
Right.
And it usually works. It's every once in a while somebody's running a few minutes late. But
So let's just bring up the site real quick, so that in case people want to find out how to purchase or even donate money. It is a nonprofit, so we have that. And then, so we'll bring this up, SouthSide Film Festival. Let's put this on the screen. So this is the site, SouthsideFilmFestival.com. And you can see here, you can look at all the films that are going to be shown, the venues like we just talked about with the maps and the directions between them all. And then if you even want to volunteer your time, that's here as well. And you can pull it down by filmmaker. I don't want to scroll around too much because people get a little seasick when I do that. But it's a site that's full of all the information that you would need. Purchasing tickets is going to be under here, I imagine.
Right there under
tickets.
Yeah.
So you would come right here.
Yeah, I think right now, I don't think we have online ticketing right now.
Okay.
But we do have tickets available at Deja Brew roughly about a week before the festival starts.
Got
and
it.
then running through.
So if they're a little bit farther away and they want to call, they can put it that way?
They can call, we
So-
can set tickets aside.
And just for clarity, what are the dates of the festival? So because we have not mentioned
Perfect.
them yet.
That is a good idea.
We've skated around that.
Yeah,
So
that's a good idea.
what are the actual dates of the festival this year?
So
June 13 through 17.
so it's a Tuesday is opening night.
Tuesday is opening night. Yep.
And then it goes through the weekend.
Yep. So Wednesday, all three venues are running. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all three venues starting earlier.
Yeah, they start
and
1:20
going until our closing night film.
And the whole schedule for that is on the website
Yep,
that we were
on the
just looking
website,
at. So
Right.
everyone that is interested, take a look at that.
Yep.
Sure.
We have a closing night party after the last film. We have an opening night party before the first film.
We have a second night party after
Might
this.
have another party in between
In the
there.
middle of the second film. But yeah, so that's an excellent point. David always keeps me very honest on
No, that's good.
important
That's good.
details.
That's a critical detail.
Tuesday, June 13th
June 13th. Yep.
through Saturday, June 17th?
17th.
17th.
2023.
And 2023.
2023.
I knew he was going to do that.
In case you're catching this later.
If you want to watch it later.
Yeah.
But let's move into the selections. Now, obviously,
Okay.
I leaned us towards the music selections.
Sure.
There are plenty of other amazing movies. There's
Absolutely.
a animation block. There's a LGBT film block. There's different things that are even just exceptional other films. There's horror. There's stuff that's very funny, campy. But I'm going to have us focus tonight on the music selections.
Sure.
We have three separate films that we're going to highlight with either producers or directors, and we'll intro and outro those together. But before we go there, there's some others that we
Sure.
wanted to highlight that are part of this that we don't have interviews on, but wanted to make sure that people knew about.
Yeah.
So
I
if you
can
mind-
take opening night if you want to take closing.
Sure.
Okay, so we kind of bookend with music. Opening night is called Still Working 9 to 5. And it's, if you can believe this, the 40th anniversary of the film 9 to 5 with Dolly Parton, Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda.
Sure.
Music-wise, it highlights Dolly Parton and the soundtrack, which was a huge seller.
We should have the standee.
We have a Dolly Parton
Dolly
standee
Parton
here.
right over there.
Yeah.
I swear Dolly is here.
So and apparently it was the first time Dolly Parton acted, and she did really well with it. And there's and the thing that I like particularly about the film itself is it's not just a reminiscence of here are the actors 40 years later. Here's the director. Here's Dabney Coleman looking very old. They talk about the fact that this was really one of the very first pop culture places that referenced workplace problems for women, like equal pay, sexual harassment, big time. I mean, that's one of the main thrusts of the film. And the point they make is it's 40 years later and we're still talking about these things.
Oh, yeah.
40, you know, and so it's very socially relevant to today. It's a nice kind of to reminisce, but it's also very socially relevant about what's going on in the world today. And then our closing night film, which Benny will talk about, is all music.
Yeah, Karen Carpenter, Starving for Perfection. That's the full title, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's the history of Karen Carpenter, her music, interviews with countless numbers of people. Olivia Newton-John,
Suzanne Summers,
Kristen
Chenoweth.
Yeah, Kristen Chenoweth. And then it just goes from start to finish, straight up biography. But it has a lot of like crazy references that I never knew about the background about the Carpenters. It was before my time, or I was very young when they came around. But it's an interesting documentary, and just it's been a lot of like discussion about it. A lot of like online. People have been asking from out of the area, like, when is this playing? Because I want to get there. So
I think it's an East Coast premiere.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's technically a thing, but the directors posted. The directors posted on social media like, "Hey, East Coast fans, we're coming. We're going to be in Bethlehem, 90 miles from Philly, 90 miles from New York. Come see us."
Right. Perfect.
And they will be here.
Train.
Yeah. The directors for opening night and closing night will both be here. So good Q&As coming.
A lot of good music footage from like back in the day. A lot of good, interesting like game show footage and like crazy footage from when they were on different programs and stuff.
I was surprised because I was never a Carpenters fan per se. My mom maybe had an album, maybe two, I don't know. She loved Frank Sinatra. She was playing Herb Alpert at the time, and that kind of stuff. I remember one Carpenters album she had. And, AM radio was big.
Sure.
But every song took till about 3/4 of the movie. Not only did I recognize every song, I knew all the words to all of those songs. Like almost every one of them.
It's amazing how many songs they had that just made their way right into like the brain trust
of
everybody at that time. It permeated everything.
It was just in the mind share of
you weren't so much a fan. They were just relevant.
They were absolutely
everywhere.
Yep.
And the story itself, like her story, it's tragic. I mean, it's
I was going to
tragic.
say, and then it goes into a lot of the eating disorders she had, and they just, I think Suzanne Summer, one of them says like we just didn't have a name for it back then. And like no
she was
one
the
really
first big
talking
star
about
of
it.
it.
Yeah. So that's probably a good transition to the first interview. There's a lot of very cool kind of overlaps here. The first movie is called Pistoleros, which is a name of a band that was in Tempe, Arizona. The interview is with producers of the record label they were on, but the movie producers of Fervor Records. It's David Hilker, who's the CEO, and Jeff Freundlich, who is the COO, who is a Lehigh University graduate and used to come in this very place on the regular.
On the regular.
So there's that cool overlap.
Absolutely.
And from, I think what makes these stories so compelling is they tend to have something like, in the case of Karen Carpenter and eating disorder. In the case of this one, it is a lot about addiction. And where that goes to. We'll let the interview kind of touch on a bunch of the details. One thing I wanted to mention is, of all three of these interviews, we just kind of, like I usually do for this kind of setup, I just hit record and we start talking. I wanted to edit it down to like 15 minutes, and I couldn't get any one of these three below 25 because the content was so good. So for tonight, it's only highlights of the interviews. Next week during the festival, we're going to actually be playing the full interviews as separate like bonus episodes. And then whether they, the festival social media will probably link to it. We'll obviously have it on our side. I'm guessing the filmmakers will echo it and amplify it as well. But anyway, these are just highlights, and they're so good. So please enjoy this first interview with Jeff Freundlich and David Hilker promoting the Pistoleros.
Back in 1998, we got a major label record deal. The minute we signed the deal, I went home and made room on my wall for a gold record.
Seattle used to be the heart of alternative rock, but now Tempe, Arizona has the ears of the major labels. Hailing from the valley, now the Pistoleros are ready for their moment in the sun.
There were like 6 bands in Tempe all of a sudden that had major label deals.
We met the president. I didn't know it was going to be $1 million record deal.
Understanding's not a sin.
Mark and I are like twins.
We would refer to ourselves as twins that were born 3 years apart.
My earliest memory was music, always music. Mark's the one that showed me, hey dude, those chords that you're playing with Dad and that Mexican music, and those worked for Van Morrison, Rolling Stones. My relationship with my brother Mark is very quiet. We go through periods of not really speaking to each other.
I learned quickly that Lawrence was a master manipulator of getting drugs.
Lawrence started threatening suicide.
I said to him, if you're gonna do something like that, do it somewhere where we never find your body.
One day he asked me, if you were gonna shoot yourself, would you do it like this or like this?
The bonds of brotherhood, fatherhood, and friendships are tested amidst of the turmoil of death, drugs, and rock and roll. There is the trailer to Pistoleros, and today we have producers, CEO at Fervor Records, David Hilker, and COO, Jeff Freundlich. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And wonderful movie. Had the pleasure of being able to check it out. I can't wait to hear what the audiences think here, at the SouthSide Film Festival for Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. But a tremendous, everything about it. Not only the stories and everything that goes into Lawrence and Mark's backstory there, and the story of the Pistoleros band, but even just the quality of the music, the quality of the movie shooting, a lot of great things to be had for people and viewers of this movie.
Well, thank you.
Everybody likes a good comedy, right?
Well, and that's the thing, is it does have moments of levity there, but clearly, again, just as the tagline of this thing being death, drugs, and rock and roll, it really does get into a lot of those aspects of things, whether it is addiction and suicidal ideation and that kind of stuff. It's not a movie that shies away from those deep and important topics to discuss.
Well, I think something that Dave and I talked a lot about and talked about with our director, Stephen B. Esparza, was we need to make sure that everybody that we're interviewing is speaking the truth.
Sure.
Right? It's not what's the point of doing it if we're sugarcoating any of this stuff? We want our audience to be able to empathize and understand what the throes of addiction are like, not only from the point of view of an addict, but maybe from the point of view of everybody that's affected by an addict's behavior as well.
Yeah. No, there was a statement in there that really stuck with me. That Mark, the brother, said, and we'll get into these people a little bit more in depth in a second here, but he actually shares, he says, even when an addict is clean, their behaviors are still that of an addict. And it just was something that rung true with me, that I was just like, wow, that's really difficult, because it kind of means you're never stopping that caretaking element to that person.
True.
Well, and I think in the case of these two brothers who their lives were intertwined, not only by family, but in music, right? Because they're the leaders of this band. They're writing music together. I mean, they are just so intertwined in every possible way. And so that codependency and that idea of one brother needing to save the other, and one brother knowing they can get away with certain behavior specifically because they have another brother that's going to come and pick up the pieces every time the glass.
Very true. Yeah, very true. So as we're mentioning here, we're talking about the characters. We mentioned the director here. Let me just bring up the main page for the movie so you guys can speak to some of that. This is the page that's dedicated to the Pistoleros. So we'll go back to the top here. You can see here that bonds of brotherhood, fatherhood, and friendship tagline. It is available out there, but part of the festival, of course, will be a very cool setting for that. And then here are some of the key crew. So you mentioned the director, and then yourselves as producers, as other producers on here as well. Anything you want to share about here about how this all came together?
Stephen Esparza was a friend of mine. He's a great cinematographer, and he's well known for his use of the Sony Red Cam. And so he was an integral part of how the the look of the film.
And in addition to Steve, Jimmy Gadd, who's a producer on this film, has had an incredible career in Hollywood, and his guidance throughout this entire process was really immeasurable. And this is a guy that's worked post-production on some of those big Disney Plus shows like Hawkeye, as an example. And we had Steve Griffin, our music editor. Obviously, this is a music-intensive documentary.
Big time.
And what Steve was able to bring out and finding ways to feature the music of not only the Pistoleros, but some of the side projects that the brothers did over the years, and really use their music as score as well as for featured pieces. He just did a brilliant job. So we really had like this A-list team working together to bring this to the audience.
And this was our first project. We've never made a film before. We made a lot of music and produced a lot of records, but this was our first film, and we were really fortunate to have an incredible crew.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys make more because of that. I mean, obviously, I love hearing the music stories. That's what I do here on this show. But I think my only criticism of it was that I wished it was longer. That's probably the only thing I would share is that it's an hour and it goes by in a wink, and you want more of it. So. Here's the cast, and there's more than this, but like we talked about, it's the brothers Lawrence and Mark Zubia, and then just how they kind of progress as young musicians into becoming a band together, and then where it goes to from there. But their influences being very much in the Latino culture of their father was in a mariachi band, so they are starting in music very early on.
Yeah, very, very early on. Yes. Yeah. And you can hear those roots in what they do. I think that's why people in Arizona gravitate to their music so much.
Yes. Yeah, you do hear that if you just their music is tremendous, and then all of a sudden you'll just hear very mariachi-esque kind of either riffs, or it'll sound like it's somewhat almost in the distance, but it's such a part of the music. It's very, very cool. It's a great listen. If you don't know the Pistoleros, you should go listen to some of their music. It's excellent stuff. And so a little bit of the story is like, basically Lawrence was 3 years older. You heard in the trailer there that they feel like they are twins just born 3 years apart, because they were tight from the moment that they became high school, a senior and a freshman. From that point on, they were just basically playing music together. Mark, the younger one, was the better guitarist, so he played, and Lawrence became more of the frontman singer, and was exceptional at it. Like he was, I think it's also in the movie. It's one of the best frontmen in the scene.
Lawrence is very, very charismatic.
Yeah,
and
very soulful rock voice.
Yeah.
And really, the Pistoleros and the precursor of the Pistoleros, because these two brothers have been in numerous bands over the years. I mean, they were truly the hub of the Tempe music scene. Yeah. And depending on your age, you might be very familiar with that scene or not at all. I mean, the Tempe music scene, which kind of gave rise to the Gin Blossoms, who ended up selling over 4 million records. They had hits such as Hey Jealousy, which, I mean, you could not turn on the radio without hearing that song in the mid-90s.
Mid-90s, absolutely.
Well, Mark and Lawrence were truly the hub and the connective tissue of that scene in Tempe, Arizona. They had a band called the Live Nudes prior to Pistoleros, and the house that everybody hung out at after everybody's gigs, including the Gin Blossoms, Robin Wilson, Doug Hopkins, who wrote all those hits for the Gin Blossoms. They were all going over and hanging out together and partying and sharing ideas and working up ideas at Mark and Lawrence's house. It was called the Live Nudes house. And I almost equate it to the Haight-Ashbury scene of the 1960s.
Sure.
Just like how you had Janis Joplin hanging out with the Grateful Dead and all these ideas and a sound that's now kind of that Bay Area psychedelic sound grew from that moment in time. Well, the same thing happened in Tempe, Arizona. And really the cornerstone of that, despite not having that multi-million-dollar hit, the cornerstone of that scene were these two brothers.
Yeah, and I have to think it's somewhat to do with the element of connective ethnicity they have to the region as well, that probably spoke to a larger audience than even what some of those other bands were able to bring to the table. And you mentioned Doug of Gin Blossoms. He's a big part of the early half of, like, the first act, you might say, of the story of that it's portrayed in the movie, because he also struggled with the addiction and the suicidal ideation to the point of getting kicked out of the Gin Blossoms. Then they start gigging together in Pistoleros, and it's a tough go, just because he has such a struggle with the creativity, the grind, and then just, I guess, accepting where things were landing for him, and just was in and out of commitment to the band and not, but they all genuinely cared for each other, and that's very evident in this story, and it's just a struggle for them when basically Doug does take his own life, and it becomes something that the band has to work through.
Well, and I think one of the things that, like, Dave and I discussed when we're trying to, assemble this film, and working with our picture editor Victor Para, working with Steve, our director, is there's a contrast between the trajectory of Lawrence's life and that of Doug Hopkins of the Gin Blossoms, right? Yeah. Here are two unbelievably creative people. Mm-hmm. One succeeds in taking their own life and the other lives. Mm-hmm. And that idea of, if you could just live a little bit longer and wait for the miracle to happen. Yep. Well, I think in Lawrence's life, he did. He got everything he wanted, even if it didn't get wrapped up in the bow and the package that he expected. No. But he had an incredible family, and he was very, very close to his children. Yep. He found a home at Fervor Records for his music.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting. We obviously won't get into all the details, but where he finds that turning point was one of the lowest of the lows for him.
And we're in the music business, and Lawrence isn't the only person that we know with a substance abuse problem, and they all have similar stories of you have to be at rock bottom and you have to be ready to turn this around. Yeah, everybody is there to help you, but unless you're ready to do it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and that was very clear in the movie of you talked about earlier, the genuine raw interviews that happen in that moment when he's sharing where he comes to that rock bottom is just very emotional, and I highly encourage people to check this movie out, because it's so worth the journey to hear the entire story, but also to see this kind of there's this phrase that I had read where it's ultimately where there's breath, there is hope for redemption, and I think that was just such a great element to the story.
Yeah, that came from Chris Kirkwood of the Meat Puppets, who was also an integral part of that scene, and yes, leading up to that scene actually. Yep. And he's struggled as well, and there's a lot of similarity between the Meat Puppets and Mark and Lawrence, because that's a band that was started by brothers, and they had a lot of the same issues with addiction, and so it's coming from Chris. He really nailed it.
One of the things I love about that moment in the film, and so for those of you that are going to watch it, is you can see this glimmer of light in Chris's eyes when he says that. It's almost like you can see his brain click over and turn over this incredible phrase, and it's almost like the light of God is shining in Chris's eyes when he says that, and it's like a really beautiful moment. It's actually one of my favorite moments of the film, and it really became, I think, a mantra for us in assembling this film and putting it together. We knew that was an inflection point, and that's a moment that is going to resonate with audiences.
Totally. Yeah. And you are both in it as well. You share, because like you said, that you've had, connections to the members, in many capacities. And clearly, like you said, these aren't the only people that have to work through this. It's very clear your personal connection to the storyline and the themes as well. So I commend you both for having that vulnerability yourselves, as well as putting it out there for people and being able to, again, you're right. I think it's going to be the kind of thing where people who are battling will find a lot in it and not feel as alone, you would hope. And then people who are
supportive will also see that, like you said, it's a very full circle kind of reveal on what this does to everyone. And so, again, kudos to you all and to your crew of putting together an amazing, experience for people.
Well, thanks. I mean, it really was a labor of love.
We really invite you to get absorbed in this story, and we want to thank you for supporting independent filmmaking as well as independent music. There's a lot of creative people out there that have some really incredible stories to tell, and we just have to give them a chance. And so anytime that somebody's putting us on a platform and letting us share this story, we're greatly appreciative, just like how I think for Lawrence and Mark, it was cathartic for them to get this out, right? And to let their story be heard. So thank you for elevating and illuminating this story for a larger audience.
Oh, listen, thank you for joining and for putting this art out there. It's really, it's very touching and inspiring and humbling. And again, amazing music too. Like, we can't deny that part as well as just putting that great stuff out there. So again, everybody definitely check out the Pistoleros. If you get a chance, go check out Fervor Records.
But yeah, Fervor's has a pretty wide breadth of scope, and you can just go to fervor-records.com and kind of see what we do and see what other products are available, etc.
Including the soundtrack to Pistoleros, Death, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. So it's a great way to kind of get an overall feel for the Pistoleros work, as well as Mark Zubia and some of these other bands that the brothers were in. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will also link to all of that in the show notes here to, the Pistoleros directly, as well as, the Fervor Records and the various other things like the soundtrack and such. David, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and best of luck with this film, and hopefully many more down the road.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Very cool interview there with David Hilker and Jeff Freundlich, producers from Fervor Records for the Pistoleros.
Yeah.
Again, I thought the film was excellent. You heard me saying there, the only criticism I had was I wanted it to go longer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just want to mention our relationship with Jeff Freundlich. When we opened Deja Brew in '95, Jeff may have been a junior at Lehigh, I think. And he and his girlfriend at the time, Tracy, who is now his wife of many, many years, they were in here all the time.
Yep.
They were repping record companies back then. They would bring us CDs of David Gray's first CD and Rodrigo and Gabriella, and could you guys play this on stereo so people can hear it?
Wow.
He was hooking up bands at Lehigh to come in here when we used to stay open late at night, and he would have bands playing here. So he's been doing this pretty much all his life.
That's so cool.
And then he moved out west and to Arizona and started Fervor, and we remained friends on Facebook. And probably less than a year ago, he and Tracy walk in with a couple other folks, and he said, "My daughter's looking at Lehigh," and of course that made me feel very old. And the cool part is that I just saw about a week ago that his daughter is coming to Lehigh.
Yes,
so that's exciting.
He mentioned that.
Yeah, so
he
that's very
said
cool.
He couldn't come in for the week of the festival, but he will be in here in the fall.
Yeah.
And so he was saying that he wants to stop by here and,
Absolutely.
and say hello and stuff
Very
like
cool.
that. So highly recommend checking out that film. Again, if you're near Bethlehem and can get here for the festival, check it out here. But either way, definitely check out. And the music too. I mean, again, you're going to hear me probably say that next to all three of these. But the music, the Pistoleros music, I was not aware of, and I now have it on like some of my Spotify playlists because I think it's
funny
very
when
good
he talks
music.
about that scene, like that Tempe scene, he compared it to Haight-Ashbury, and I was thinking about like the Laurel Canyon scene where they all hung out.
I thought Laurel Canyon
all this
as well,
stuff. And even some of the Greenwich Village kind of scene where people, it's all those little kind of scenes that develop and those artists
clusters that
And we're going to get to one. The last interview is another one that's similar to that.
Exactly. Yep.
But before we get to that one, the next one we're going to talk about here is actually a short.
Yep.
So it's called, the music is called Lipstick of the Brave. And since it's a short, there's obviously not a trailer for it.
Right.
Because you'd watch the whole thing.
Right.
So what we have is some audience feedback from a prior festival.
Oh, okay.
An organization called Wild Sound had it out there, and I reached out to them and I said, would you mind if I used this as an intro to the interview with the artist? And they said, of course you can use it. I was like, well, not of course. Not everyone says yes. Right. But anyway, so thank you to Wild Sound for letting us use that. The band is called Tripping Jupiter. Mm-hmm. The artist is Madstone Rowan. And Madstone has a very, very cool sound. It's very piano-driven and is non-binary. And so a lot of the music is trying to share, and this song in particular is sharing the difficulty of growing up, knowing that you were, not matching norms, and how difficult it was to find yourself in whether it was media or movies, or feeling like you were accepted for who you were, and then the different icons that they found along the way that helped them feel just a little bit better. And then amazing illustration of it by Bill Plympton. And so it's a great interview, joined by their music producer, Barb Morrison, who has a phenomenal resume, and we get into it in the interview as well. But great interview here with Madstone Rowan and Barb Morrison on Lipstick of the Brave. Anything you would want to share about this one while I pull it up?
Benny, this is one that you found. I think you had another Bill Plympton film
I think
for us.
we just had a bunch of Bill Plympton films, and I was like, what is this short? And I'm like, we've got to get this because Bill Plympton. And then the video was fantastic. We were all like, yep, it's definitely in. Yeah,
so definitely check out here. Again, the opening has the audience feedback, and then the interview with Madstone and Barb is excellent. So here, check it out, Lipstick of the Brave.
Lipstick of the Brave was really lovely. The lyrics tell such a rich story, and the performance was beautiful. And I don't know if I'm off the mark here, but the title Lipstick of the Brave reminded me of the phrase Home of the Brave. That, combined with the red, blue, and white that we saw consistently throughout the piece, it seemed to be making this really quiet statement that people who identify and live as non-binary are just as American as those who do not. That was my take from it, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
The visuals are very unique to the song. The level of animation and the drawings, it just coherently tells the story of what the song is singing. And I always love when a music video does something like this, because it brings you into more than just a song. It tells a story within the song and the visuals. And that was truly appreciative for me. I really love this film.
And the way it was colored in looked like it could have been crayon or colored pencil. And so then I was thinking about drawing as a child, and in this song, the artist focuses a lot on others who influenced him artistically as a child. And I think that that's the powerful part of this piece, is to acknowledge the impact that other individuals in our community or other artists can have on us as we grow up, and how they can really help to give us permission to be fully ourselves and to shape who we are.
Yeah, beautifully executed song, beautifully sung, beautifully produced. Love the music, love every aspect of the production of it. Beautiful message. The animation was great. Bill Plympton, and I've been seeing his work for years, and just absolutely love it. The animation really illustrated the song beautifully and brought the story out.
Of course, Bill Plympton is a great animation artist, so it's just a joy to see this short animated film that is scored by such a great song, really powerful lyrics. Just the whole thing just swept me away. I loved it.
First of all, the song was just so beautiful and told a really amazing story. And the art was just something like I've never seen before. And I just loved the way it all kind of like flowed into each other and just created this really intriguing story that I didn't want to take my eyes off of.
This was a really moving piece. The message there is pretty clear. And the animation is really eye-catching. It does kind of draw you in. I enjoy all sorts of styles of animations, and this one's no exception. So yeah, all in all, definitely a worthy one of checking out.
So there you have audience feedback for viewers of Lipstick of the Brave, a short by executive producer and singer-songwriter Madstone Rowan of Tripping Jupiter. And also with us today is producer Barb Morrison. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Phillip.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Well, I just have to say, as many of those people did an even better job than I ever would of just expressing just how moving and touching and wonderful this piece of art is. I mean, I just think it's not only, it's this wonderful combination of music and theme and then the illustration just adds to it. And it's just a stunning work. And I just think, kudos to you all. And I'm just glad and honored that we're bringing out to festivals like ours and others out there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing so the song never would have been written if I hadn't met and worked with Barb Morrison, because we met before we even decided to do a record.
Mm-hmm.
We were meeting once weekly on Zoom for Music Mentor. And I was just trying to figure out the recording program on my Mac called Logic. And I was actually doing a project for some band I had been in previously. And I said, well, maybe I want to do some writing too, maybe. And within a few weeks, the songs just started pouring out.
Sure.
And I remember just saying to Barb, I think I have an album in me. And of course, the consummate professional Barb's like, let's take it one song at a time. Let's see what you got. One of my assignments, one of my homework, and this has to do with Lipstick, was I was very excited. We had recorded some rough demos, rough mixes of a few songs that I had started writing. Like I said, the songs just started pouring out of me. I was very happy with them. And I would listen to them late at night with my eyes closed, kind of visioning myself performing them live in front of an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the brainstorm that I was going to open my set with a cover, science fiction double feature by Rocky Horror.
Right.
I thought, this is my most brilliant idea yet. And I said that to Barb during our mentor session, and Barb said no.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what do you mean now? And they said, you're going to write your own science fiction double feature. And I thought, I got mad. I was like, no, you can't tell me that. But listen, later that night, I thought, what did Richard O'Brien try to do in that song? He wrote about the things that were important to him growing up, those science fiction movies.
Yep.
I said, what impacted me? And right out of the, very, very quickly came to me, it was those artists that pushed the gender boundaries that stood out to me, whether it was Tim Curry as an actor in Rocky Horror, David Bowie, Lou Reed, but also I think about like some of the artists from the past, dozen years that have been global artists. Lady Gaga was another one who really pushed gender boundaries, and the song then wrote itself. So it was magical the way it happened. And are we allowed to use colorful language here?
Whatever you'd like.
So once I sent the demo to Barb, at 4:30 in the morning, I get an email back saying, "Motherfucker, you made me cry." So, Barb, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I love that story.
Well,
so yeah, Barb, if you could add
you know,
your context to it.
Like Madstone had said, we started off with just a couple songs. Madstone was in the middle of like working on a project for another band and then sent me some originals. The first original, I was like, huh, this is a really cool song.
Right.
And then like the second original, I was like, wait a minute, this person's a really good songwriter. And then it was, time for me to push them further.
I think that's one. I mean, like we all need that in our lives, especially if you don't see or have the confidence in yourself that maybe someone else sees that brilliance
and the
Yeah.
person needs to kick you in the butt, and I just think that's a great element to
What
this
happens?
story. Yeah.
And what came back was like tenfold of what I expected. And
Yeah.
then let me tell you, Philip, the next couple of songs just like blew my head off. I mean, it was just amazing, the transformation in the songwriting that happened after Lipstick of the Brave. Lipstick of the Brave felt like it was this beautiful,
Sure.
you know, Sistine Chapel, and then all of a sudden these other songs just rolled out that were just absolutely gorgeous. So
Sure.
we didn't want to cut any corners on all of it. We were like, we want to go big on everything.
Absolutely. And I guess, and for the audience, if you don't mind, Barb, just to give some context here, you've been producer for Debbie Harry of Blondie, and also like Rufus Wainwright and Franz Ferdinand, like some other big names. So like you're also coming at this with a tremendous amount of credibility and experience. And so to spot that brilliance and that talent is coming from a place of, it's not your first time around. So that's an element of huge compliment to Madstone, but also, again, for the audience to know, this is somebody who really knows what they're talking about.
And I wouldn't have used the words Sistine Chapel if I didn't think it was like a big piece of art that Madstone was kicking out there.
Absolutely.
And a very, very important piece of art that we need now more than ever.
You're so right about that. I mean, like, it's so frustrating that, you feel like you made progress and then you go backward. And it's just like, how could we be in this spot now after all these years in so many different ways? And it's just...
If I could just add to that, when I decided that my persona artistically was going to reflect my embracing the divine feminine inside of me and reflect that visually through the way I dress, the makeup I wear, drag was not controversial. Drag was mainstream. I mean, it still is, but it wasn't controversial. Nobody was complaining about it. I'm not saying people who were in the queer community weren't struggling, because that's always been an issue.
Of course.
But for the mainstream, it wasn't considered controversial. And I won't say mundane, but it was fairly mainstream. And then all of a sudden shit hit the fan. And, my thing was, okay, well, it's more important than ever that we get this message out.
Yes.
Because there's a 13-year-old kid out there.
Oh, absolutely.
Who doesn't know what to do and if they should continue living. And they need to see themselves out there.
Yes.
And they need people to be brave until they can be brave.
Yes.
And we can be brave together. So it became more of a message and not just an expression of how I felt inside. That's why I'm happy with the video. And well, this short film, I mean, I knew it had to have a special treatment. I didn't just want to do a quote unquote music video. I wanted it to be a short film. And I've always been a fan of Bill Plympton.
Yeah.
Who's a quirky, he's like 76 and still draws everything by hand.
Yep.
And I just thought, who am I? Who am I to reach out to Bill Plympton? Well, I'm me. And I found his email address and I wrote him. I said, I'm an independent artist.
Yep.
And his response was, I'll consider working. Let's hear the song.
Sure.
And he called me the next day and said, I love it. So, the process with Barb brought it out.
Yep.
It was in here and then it got out here. And then we brought on Bill to do this beautiful, beautiful animation and send a message out to the world that, hey, it's okay.
Yeah, I think, like you said, and there's this phrase that always sticks with me, is that representation matters. So until you see yourself in what you want to be, whether it's how you dress or in what your career you want to be, or in some element, elevated position in politics, whatever, if you don't ever see that, yourself in that role or in that dress, you don't think it's okay. And so you're right. Like, that is so hugely important for that to be out there in every capacity, whether it is in, just visually or in music or whatever. And clearly you're an example of that. You were inspired by it and then now wrote a song about that inspiration. Like, it's just like that domino effect. So definitely hope that this gets out there for those types of people who maybe are feeling alone or scared or whatever, and that it might make them feel just a little bit better about that.
We walked into a club in New York City the other night. Myself, Marie Dragdalin, who sings backup with the band, and one of our community, because Tripping Jupiter is not just a band. And the MC of this piano bar said, "Who are you?" Because we walked in looking fabulous, and they're like, "Who are you?" And I said, "We're Tripping Jupiter." And they said, "Are you a band?" I said, "Yes, and we're a way of life." Because we see what we're doing as really, we're building a community of creative misfits who want to change the world. And we're doing what we can to like, really, this is an exciting time, right? As bad as the bad stuff is, there's this renaissance and rebirth. And I feel we're on the cusp of it, of creativity in a way that we haven't felt in a while. It was interesting. The song they asked us to sing at the piano bar was Age of Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In. We are definitely, and for those in the audience, and those are my friends who are more aware of the stars aligning and the planets, they know that there's a shift coming.
Sure.
So better get right, everyone, and be on the right side. And if you don't know what that is, listen to Tripping Jupiter, and we'll let you know.
I just want to say one thing about that. You know, I didn't realize a lot of this philosophy when I first started the project with Madstone. And then as the songs started rolling in, and you know, sometimes you're like halfway through a song, working on a song as a producer, and then you'll be like, "Oh, that's what the artist is saying?" Like sometimes you just kind of go with vibe. You know, a lot of times I try to make sure I know what the lyrics are, but so many of Madstone's lyrics are inclusive and positive and philosophical and all encompassing. Like they just said, you know, it's not just a band, it's a way of life. And Madstone really wants to make sure everyone feels included, and you know, only you can say for yourself if you're Tripping Jupiter, if you're in the fold. You know, you can, nobody else can tell you. You can only
Are you?
Yeah.
Philip, are you
Absolutely.
Are you Tripping Jupiter, Philip?
Absolutely.
Okay, you're in. It's that easy. And we don't have monthly dues either.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really ignore the universe just really coming together on this stuff. Like, I'll be frou-frou if you weren't before. This is not just physical, but this is like the universe giving you, you know, a yes from Bill Plympton and a yes from Galen Dorsey, and obviously Barb's brilliance there. And like, it's just everything pointing to the fact that there's something special going on here.
Yes.
Yeah, and the rest of our team on it. I mean, we had Jeremy Kinney, who just worked with Tokyo Hotel and Fletcher. We had John Jetter, who mixed it, and he's done, oh my God, he's done so much stuff. Yeah, so really, Philip, we had like, you know, heavy hitters on this, and everybody took a chance on Madstone because, like Madstone said, you know, they didn't have any music out. They were a brand new artist. Everybody was just like, did the same thing I did, which was heard it and went, "Oh wow,
yeah,
this is great." You
That's
know,
awesome.
you don't usually get that in the industry with like the people that are working, you know,
For
that
sure.
are the big jobs. You
Usually,
know?
yeah, absolutely, totally get that. But we will link to all of these elements, whether it's the website, the YouTube channel, you know, the different social medias, different ways that people can access your work. You know, the full album, and then also any other ways that they might be able to catch it at a festival coming up. Well, Madstone, Barb, really thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for sharing the stories and for putting this wonderful art and this great vision out there for people to kind of observe and again, hopefully unlock some things for some people so that they don't, you know, feel quite as alone. And can't wait to check out a Tripping Jupiter performance in the future. That sounds like something that I definitely won't want to miss out on.
We'd love to come to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we definitely got to make that happen.
But I think based on the name of this podcast, your next favorite band could very well be Tripping Jupiter.
It absolutely
Just don't know
will
it
be.
yet, so check out our music.
It absolutely will be. Well, you're now, from this point going forward, a favorite. You're no longer a next favorite.
Thanks, Philip.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And excited to be at the SouthSide Film Festival. There's a lot of great films going on there, so it is an honor to be there. We're really excited.
We're very proud of it, and it is a great job that they do, and I'm now just honored to be a part of kind of sharing some of the pre-stories of the music-related entries. And so hopefully everybody gets a chance who is within reach of Bethlehem will come out next week to be able to enjoy some of the films. And if you do, come by and say hi.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Phillip.
Thank you. Bye.
Barb Morrison, who were the music creators, songwriters, and Madstone was the executive producer of the whole Lipstick of the Brave music short. And really had fun talking. I mean, it's such a great group of people to talk to. Ben, you seem to have something in there that was an interesting tidbit of info that came out to you.
I was just like amazed at that interview. That was great. I was like, it's funny because it's just like, it's one of those things just like, I happened to see Bill put out a new film. And I'm like, oh, let's see what this is. And I was like, wow, I was like blown away. I'm like, I hope the rest of the jury likes this, and everybody did, which was great. And again, like, I had no idea about the musician, so it was just like, wow. I'm like, and then it's like, you want to learn more about the musician just from that, right? Which is great.
Yeah. No, and if you saw there some of the edits of that one, I had to put in like the topic jumped so strongly that I just decided to put a little bit of a transition in there so that you knew we weren't completely out of our minds, just slightly. But that's what I really encourage you to maybe take a moment to check out the full interviews that'll be released, like kind of sidecar to all of this, because we get into some really interesting conversations around like the political aspect of this piece and how, they're out there just trying to put this out there to help probably like a 13-year-old version of themselves.
Sure.
And it's not a political statement, but they're being forced to commentary. Anyway, it's just a very cool dive into that aspect of being an artist forced into that rather than actually trying to make it about that. They're trying to make it about kind of acceptance and and love and all this other stuff, and then it turns into something else entirely. So anyway, it's a cool commentary there. And then we dive a little bit deeper into their other song, that We Are Starlight, that also has a great video, but really more of a short movie. Just the aspect of being able to play with Galen Dorsey and, a bassist for David Bowie.
She was the last bassist for Bowie.
Yeah.
So
and just a very, very cool story about just that interaction and stuff. I just thought for tonight the highlights being more about this one, but it's a very cool other aspects to that one, and the other ones too. There's some other aspects of Pistoleros, and certainly the one we're going to talk about next, which the first two were heavy topics. Let's end on something light and fun and airy and like we talked about before, a community of artists and musicians, creators, who was just such a fascinating dive into their community, like just such an interesting crew. And opposite from the others, this one just had nothing but positive vibes. Like these were all hugely supportive of each other, almost so much so that they just couldn't stop creating with whatever they had in front of them. And so this is about the Elephant Six Recording Company. And we had the opportunity to interview the director, Chad C.B. Stockfleth. And I just loved this movie. You'll hear me rave about it as we chat. But like the other ones, this one also is about half as long as what the full interview is, and so I encourage you to check that one out. But please enjoy our conversation with Chad about the Elephant Six Recording Company.
We did something that's great. I'm happy as fuck about that.
There was a message of hope inside this like super fuzz bass.
It seemed like more than just bands, putting out records. It was like a movement.
We all just sort of fell in love with making music together and making tapes for each other.
everybody you ran into was passionately building, sculpting, recording.
We got an organ with one note that works and a banjo with 2 strings. What else do you need?
We were like, come freaks, one and all.
They're weirdos, and I love them.
This bunch of transient oddballs.
It was really just chaos.
Everybody appeared on everybody's record. It's like, oh, we need viola, we need a trumpet.
It's kind of like loading a cannon, and when you fire that cannonball, it's out of your control.
We'd call in sick to work, take a bunch of downers, and play our spacey music.
I remember it feeling very mysterious to me.
It wasn't easy to hunt down information about who these people were.
The idea that what we were doing would find an audience was pretty improbable.
There was a school of thought that ran the 90s, and they ended it.
Your curiosity will certainly be satisfied.
And there you have the trailer for the Elephant Six Recording Company. And today we have director Chad C.B. Stockfleth. Thank you for joining us, Chad.
How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm doing great. Had the pleasure and the honor of watching this movie recently and just thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was such a great, just reveal to this very, very cool artist community, basically might be the best way to put it, and put together in such a great way by yourself and your team.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited for it to be coming out into the world in a broader way. It's a project that we worked on for a long time.
I'm sure,
and
yeah.
had hoped to have come out a few years ago, and then, like so many things, the pandemic put it on hold, and now finally it's making its way out into the world. And so we're so glad people will have a chance to see it.
Absolutely. So in the very beginning, and I think this was a very cool thing, is someone is asking a lot of the people who are part of this, what is Elephant Six?
Mm-hmm.
And so I ask you.
That's me naively asking, what is Elephant Six?
Right, so now I ask you, having created the movie, what is Elephant Six?
Oh, God.
Which this is not unlike most of their responses to.
I know, right?
I think this is great.
Maybe I never learned. It's, it's about togetherness, and it's about community, and it's about friendship, and it's about self-expression.
Yep.
Like unbridled self-expression.
Totally.
Through friendship.
Right. And the name came from a Max Ernst painting, who was a big fan of
That's at least one story that's presented in the film. I've heard others as well.
Well, there you go. Well, we'll go with that one for now, but good to know that it may not be the definitive one.
Yeah, when you're playing in the realm of mythology, there can be many answers to it.
That's very true. That's very true.
Chose one and go forward with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the cool part is that this what is Elephant Six? The very easy answer would be, well, it's a recording studio or recording. And the fact that it isn't as easy as that is what makes this movie and this story so compelling. So I actually love the fact that that's how you kind of do some of the intro to this early on in the film, and then you didn't even know how to answer it even after having spent all those years kind of bathing in it. So I guess I wanted to, for the sake of the people who are tuning in here, to get a little bit more sense of the movie. Primarily, it's built around, and I'm not going to do it justice because I didn't write down more than 5 of them, but a lot of bands that came together in it looks like it kind of started somewhat, the birth of it was in Ruston, Louisiana, and then a branch of them went to Athens, Georgia, and a branch went to Denver, Colorado. Is that kind of set things up there?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they started out as classmates in grade school and then later in high school as well. And in Ruston, Louisiana, which is in sort of north central Louisiana, not very far from Arkansas, there was a small university. And so there was not a lot going on there, but there was a little bit of culture. And they were able to find each other and start to explore art together, I guess is how I would put it,
Certainly,
the way that a lot of people do when they're young.
Yes, that's true.
They get interested in things and they start to explore them. But it's so important to have other people that are like-minded that want to go down those rabbit holes with you.
Oh,
and,
totally.
push your exploration deeper. And so, Robert Schneider and Jeff Mangum and Will Hart and Bill Doss all became very close friends and all had a passion for 4-track recording. And that's how it began. They started making cassettes, and those cassettes, turned in, and recording projects with one another, and those turned into bands.
Yep. And so real quick, those band names, because people will, the one probably most well-known would be Neutral Milk Hotel.
Sure.
Some of the other ones that might be recognizable is the Apples in Stereo, the Olivia Tremor Control, Elf Power, Of Montreal, and then there was plenty of others. And the other thing that was very cool and very evident in the movie was they would play certain instruments and be Olivia Tremor Control, and then they would be the opener for themselves. They would then change instruments and become Neutral Milk Hotel, but it was all the same performers playing different instruments.
Yeah, I think that's, that goes back to how they started, where they were just 4 friends making recording projects, and each person was their own band. Yep. But then if 2 of them recorded a song on 4-track, that was its own band. And then if 2 other of them were in a band, that was a band. So it was always different bands, but often the same people. And that just, that spiral evolved into a scene that included a lot more people over time.
Yeah, because it seemed like it started to pull other people into the orbit who they did start to settle into, okay, these 4 people are this band and these 3 are this and so on. But it was also supportive. It was this great community of art and creation that had almost no boundaries. And no one was ever a ringleader other than out of, they had the idea of the moment. Maybe Rob Schneider seemed to be a little bit more of the continual ringleader just because he seemed to have such great ideas and such ability to almost pull something excellent out of somebody that they didn't even know was there.
Yeah, Robert Schneider is this incredible force of energy and enthusiasm, and he is really amazing at making things happen, making you feel really excited about starting a project.
Yep.
Telling you you're the only person in the world that can complete a project like that. And the way that he was sort of cheerleader for his fans, as well as artistic collaborator, and he's so brilliant as an engineer.
Yep.
And then also, just as an artistic, aesthetic person, he has so many unique and quirky ideas.
Yep.
And then when you take all of these different minds, these Jeff Mangums and Will Harts that have all these sort of different crazy ideas, and you filter them through sort of a certain amount of technical proficiency, you come out with all of these great records.
Absolutely. I love that one part where someone was talking about how they were just waking up and there was Rob in his ear, right at the first thing in the morning going, let's go make rock and roll history.
Yeah, and that, that really is, it's a hilarious moment to me in the film as well. Yeah, I mean, that really is his ethos on things is, what we're doing is important, and it will find an audience. And if nothing else, we're making history right now.
That's
and I he makes you believe it. He's
times, that was such a great window into who these people were. Knowing the music was one thing, but now getting to know the person behind the music. These were such incredible people, like you said, just incredible artists, but so supportive, and it was great.
The fact that they all sort of found each other in this small, southern town is really amazing to me. I think it's serendipitous that these very creative minds all happen to be from this, small rural town and find each other and become best friends.
Absolutely. And kind of another thing that was amazing was it also becomes very evident that they were so creative and so inspired to make music, but yet not trained for it. And I mean that with respect. If you saw it in the trailer there, and it happens a bunch of times, they speak in sound. They don't know how to write the music out or to explain it to somebody through music theory or whatever. They just kind of would be like, okay, go ba 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 ba, and then be like, no, how about that? And they all just knew it. And then you bring in the sound of the actual song that was being written, and it sounds exactly like what they just talked about.
Yeah,
and it was this brilliant way of telling the story, because if you just listen to them speak it, you might think, okay, that never actually went anywhere. They're crazy. But you, by presenting it in such a way with the editing, by showing, no, that actually sounded exactly like that when they recorded it. And it was just such a cool way to tell the story.
Yeah, I think one thing that unites them is they all have a very intuitive way of approaching how they want to make their music.
So they would shirk these, like, again, these tropes or these rules around things because they knew they didn't necessarily have to apply. And if it meant restricting their creative, kind of forces, then they were just going to break through those barriers. And I just
it's funny to think that there are rules about what you do when you go into a studio, right? Like, you're not allowed to play a basketball, like
right.
instrument, but why? I mean, it's very much like a round drum.
Correct.
In essence. So.
Yep.
Why would you put limits on yourself when you go in to make something?
Shouldn't. Absolutely.
And not to maybe be too heady about it, but like, I find this film actually very philosophical. Like, their philosophies on making music and making art and the way they live their lives has rubbed off on me over time.
That's excellent.
It was an education for myself as well.
Well, I would say, having watched it only a few days ago, I didn't want it to be over, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I wanted to go create. Like, after it was over, I was like, what can I go do to make something? Like, I just wanted to create something, whether it didn't have to be music, just anything. It was very kind of like inspiring to be around so many creatives, even just through the medium of the movie.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, and that's like the best compliment that we can get for it. Was our hope and intention, is that, and when you meet these guys in real life, you definitely feel that way. Robert and Will and those guys, they're just constantly making stuff, and it's just like, you hang out with them for an hour and you're like, I want to go do more.
It's infectious.
Do more.
It absolutely is infectious, for sure. And then, so just quickly sharing, this is hopefully just to make people to want to go check out the movie, either to come to the film festival in Bethlehem or wherever else it might be showing. We'll have links in the show notes to find out where the different expeditions are, or eventually it'll be available, I'm sure. But like, they set up a recording studio in a condemned building. They're building things, like you had talked about, Rob being an engineer. He's getting parts and pieces of things, but then he's so brilliant, he's able to put it all together and make it work. And then there was this awesome quote. I love this one. So Jason Heller, who was a journalist, right?
Yes.
This one made me laugh. I rewound the movie and listened to it a second time. It said, this was when he went to go see one of the first time they went to go see, I think it was Apples in Stereo. And this is just a direct quote from him. "It may be the sloppiest band I had ever seen. Their equipment was shit. It didn't seem like they were all playing the same song, but it was awesome." Like, it was just the kind of thing where he was just like, all of this stuff would tell me that I shouldn't enjoy this, but yet I am.
Yeah, and I think it's important to them that it have a vibe or a mood, like, technical proficiency is not the only requirement to join a band with them.
No.
It's a lot of like your personality, and can you translate your personality into the music?
And another compliment I wanted to give you is on the use of that music, like I talked about before, with where they would speak to each other in noise, and then it would translate to a song. These moments too, like where, again, it was in the trailer and you were just talking about it, they had an organ that had one note that worked and a banjo with two strings, and what more do you need? Sure. Which was followed by the exact song that used that component. Then
that's an early Jeff Mangum Neutral Milk Hotel song from a tape cassette record he put out.
And I just thought what you kept doing was like proving the point that these people weren't out of their minds. Like, because you would think on these statements alone, they just wouldn't work. And then all of a sudden you're like, time after time, you're proving that no, not only are they inspired by this, but here's the song, and it's incredibly awesome to listen to.
We're very excited. Some of the Elephant Six bands are going to be touring this summer as well. Elf Power will be touring around the United States, and the Music Tapes, which is Julian Coster from Neutral Milk Hotel, who plays the saw, banjo, and other awesome instruments. The Music Tapes will be touring around the United States and maybe some other countries as well. So I would encourage people to go experience it in person.
That is absolutely very cool. I'm hoping that they get a whole kind of revival from this movie, because for me, if nothing else, it introduced me to a few of the bands that I had not really ever looked into, not realizing how connected they were to some of these other ones that I was into. So it's opened up a whole, a catalog of music that I'm now checking out that I hadn't before. And so I just recommend people to check out the movie and to, like you said, check out the music. it is just such a feel-good movie. There's no ill will in there. Like everybody, again, like we keep saying, it's a supportive community that created great music, and it's just such a joy to kind of be able to just witness it through the movie. And so thank you for that experience, and best of luck for all the showings and screenings. I hope it collects a lot of awards and gets that wider release that you're talking about.
Thank you. It was important for us that to increase the positivity in the world.
Sure.
At least one iota. So
always nice to see that happening. So.
Yeah, I'm glad it can be through the medium of Elephant Six.
Absolutely. Well, Chad, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
What is Elephant Six? You're going to want to know. Yeah. You're going to want to be as confused on how to answer that question. Loved the movie. Thought it was amazing. If you like that kind of music, you're going to want to check it out that much more. But even if it's not your thing, it's still a great movie.
Excellent. Yeah.
Sponsored this year by
Lehigh Valley Apparel Creations.
Yep. Yeah. And thank you to them for sponsoring that movie and for letting me be inspired to reach out to the director and get that opportunity. There's back to again like this, there's a lot of talk in the movie about 4-track, that being somewhat of their inspiration early on, because it makes you feel like a magician on how you're able to create. Right. But then their love of it means that even as they progress more sophisticated equipment, they still try to go back to the 4-track sound. Yes. And then there's so we dive deeper into that with the director, because that was a big part of the movie and the creation of these different sounds. And then that kind of like where everything came together. If you heard there, they kind of split between those two cities, where Jeff Mangum from Neutral Milk Hotel wants to create his first album. Finds Rob Schneider of Apples and Stereo in Denver and that Elephant Six recording studio, and it's the only one that isn't slick in the way that they talk about it. I love, there's this one line that Rob Schneider says where he goes, I wanted to achieve a sound that was 1966 to 1967. Right. It's like, holy smokes. And then he's like, 1969 would have been too slick. And then it's like, and he's dead serious. Like, that's exactly what he's talking about. And
they had 8 tracks.
Yeah, 8 tracks. And he wants tape hiss, and he wants all that kind of stuff, and that's what Jeff wanted too. And that's that first album. And the director goes into a very cool story about just how almost sweet the friendship was that was formed by these two people, somewhat completely on the same page and creating rock and roll history in the way that they put it. So great movie, great story, great music, and it was a pleasure to be able to talk to them as well as the other creators as well through this process. And I wanted to thank the SouthSide Film Festival for allowing us to kind of have this moment to put something out there a little bit different, but still music discovery in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said, your next favorite band goes to the movies.
Yes. Yeah. And again, too, like we talked about this with, like, we've recently had on people for interviews like Sean Kelly of The Samples. We talked about Seal. Like, we're almost saying in those cases where if we somehow introduced you to that artist, and a case here, too, like if you didn't know any of this music and that somehow caught your ear, my goodness, do you have a giant your catalog to go through.
Your head is about ready to turn backwards when you find out like how much great stuff you have to go like discover.
Right, and far be it for me to even assume that is, but if there's one person out there that's like, wait, that sounded dope, let's go listen to that, you're welcome, because you're going to probably play music straight for the next month and not have a duplicate, and it's all going to be great. So let's recap.
Okay.
SouthSide Film Festival, next week, Tuesday, June 13th.
Yep. Opening night.
Is opening night. There's an opening party.
Opening night party.
And then there's 3 different venues showing shows Wednesday, Thursday, Friday into Saturday. There's an earlier start on Saturday the 17th. There's a closing movie of the Karen Carpenter story.
Yep. There's also a late night horror movie on Friday.
Oh, there you go.
Don't forget.
At a new venue.
At a new venue. We're going to be at Banco Ale House.
Wow. So we got
for that screening only. Yep.
That's great to hear.
Satanic Hispanics.
Yes.
Was it Hispanic Satanics?
Satanic Hispanics.
Yes.
Yeah. With a couple of lead-in horror short comedy shorts. Excellent night, excellent packaging, as always.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so good stuff.
But yeah, so
go to their website to get all the details for the event. You can sign up to volunteer, which is an important part of what makes the whole thing work.
Absolutely.
And you can also donate so that we can do this again next year.
Absolutely.
Buy a T-shirt, buy some tickets,
buy
come to
merch,
some movies.
swing the merch, absolutely.
Support the Southside
And you
businesses.
can buy, that's right, exactly. Support the Southside businesses. And then you can also buy like a ticket that gets you into everything, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. All Access Pass gets you into all screenings, all parties, before, during, and after. Gets you into everything. And it's $50, $50?
Yeah.
It's a bargain.
Oh,
It's a real bargain. It really is.
And again, not only that, you're supporting the nonprofit. You're supporting
Absolutely.
the arts in the area. So like,
absolutely.
I think people out there, probably should lean that way, even if you're only going one night. Like, it's not a horrible thing to kind of support it because it's a special
thing. The thing that drives me more crazy than anything is when people in Bethlehem say there's nothing to do around here. I just don't understand what they're. There's so much art, so many good bands, so much music. Films, you name it. I mean, there's always something to do. There's too much to do. You can't keep up with it all.
Absolutely.
I think it's something like 32 of the 52 weekends has some sort of festival somewhere in Bethlehem.
It's crazy. It really is.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So on that note,
all right, Phil, let's say goodbye to everybody.
we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Your Next Favorite Band. We'd like to sincerely thank Jeff Vaclavik and Ben Bertalan, the board members of the SouthSide Film Festival, and for the opportunity to not only have them on here and sitting here in Deja Brew, but also to reach out to some of the film creators who have selections in this year's festival and be able to arrange for those. So let's thank them. We'd like to thank David Hilker and Jeff Freundlich, CEO and COO of Fervor Records, who are the producers of Pistoleros, Death, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. We'd like to thank Madstone Rowan of Tripping Jupiter and Barb Morrison, who were music producer and the executive producer for Lipstick of the Brave. And thank you to Wild Sound for letting us use the audience feedback. And we'd like to thank Chad C.B. Stockcliffe, director of the Elephant Six Recording Company. All of these are great selections, but not the only ones. So definitely seek out the SouthSide Film Festival lineup. And even if you're not nearby here and you're listening in other cities and other states, seek out your local film festival. And if these are movies that you would want to see, recommend to them to go put them on the festival. If it's happening later this year or next year or what have you, they're all definitely out there promoting their art and their piece of movie making that was just quite stunning. And hopefully you enjoyed the interviews. Please be on the lookout for the full versions of all of them as we get through next week and come down and enjoy the festival. And we'll see you at a live show or a movie soon.